Hello, everyone. We are right at 3 o'clock, but we're going to give people a couple of more minutes to come on in and join us. Welcome, everybody. We are so glad that you're here today to participate as part of our EDI learning program. My name is Nicole Holland. My pronouns are she and they, and I'm with the Office of Diversity and Talent Management in Financial and Administrative Services. So we're very glad that you're here today. These events are part of our larger learning program, but they are an opportunity not only to learn, but also to connect with each other and really reflect about our world and our workplace. So I would encourage all of you, for the next 55 minutes to try to minimize distractions, let that phone charge, turn off that email for now. The work will be there when we're done today, I promise. And if you are able to, engage with us as you're throughout our time together, either through the chat, I would encourage you to turn off your cameras if you can, unmute and participate. And we'll also try to save some time at the end for questions. So feel free to put your questions in the chat throughout, and we'll try to get those answered for you. And so to introduce our speaker today, I'm going to turn it over to a member of our EDI committee, Sylvester.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sylvester Ruffin, and I go by the pronouns he and him. As I'm with the police department, and it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Shauna Tobers. Dr. Tobers is a two-time author and TED speaker. She's a leadership consultant and a Gallup certified Clifton Strengths coach. She's a resilience researcher and an intercultural communications educator. Dr. Tobers specializes in leadership education and professional development for supervisors, individuals, and teams. She's passionate about helping people recognize their talents, build resilience, and communicate across cultures. Shauna was born in Barbados, but raised in New York. She started her scholar practitioner and professional journey in California. Dr. Sobers infuses multiple perspectives, tangible examples, and practical analogies, including that of the Latin partner dance, which he also teaches, into her sessions. Welcome, Dr. Shauna T. Tobers.
Well, thank you so much, Sylvester. I appreciate that. Let's do some spotlighting here. Here we go. Okay, there we are. Awesome. All right, so I'll go ahead and jump right in then. We got a good group of folks joining us. I appreciate you all being here. So CAREfrontation, huh? This is what you all want to learn about, navigating conflict and difficult conversations. First, I want to start by, who's that? Oh, hi, Miss Rita. First, I want to start by talking about the name of the session. So CAREfrontation. Oh, hi, Stephanie. Hi. So oftentimes we'll talk about confrontation, and I shifted that a little bit to talk about CAREfrontation. Why? Because oftentimes if someone is giving feedback, if someone is telling you something, even if it's hard to hear, it's because they care in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, they wouldn't tell you about it at all. They would just leave you alone, leave you be, leave you to your own demise, etc. So I fall under the philosophy and the mindset of, if someone is giving feedback, it is a gift on a silver platter, because they do not have to tell you. And even if it hurts, or you don't like it, or you don't want to hear it, or you're not ready to hear it, or whatever the case may be, I should probably close my emails, huh? Okay, there it goes. Then, it is because they care about some aspect of the relationship, or you personally. It is a CAREfrontation. And I think that helps as we think about engaging in some of these difficult conflicts and difficult conversations, is, hey, if I am thinking about this and wanting to engage with someone else, it's probably because I care. I think that's important to think about it this way rather than feeling as though or thinking about it in terms of a confrontation, because that seems really aggressive and combative and like it's already starting with friction. Whereas if I go into it with this mindset of it's about caring about someone else and it's about caring about the relationship, it's about how we're going to be engaging with one another, then I think that already shifts the tone of the conversation. So let's see here if I can share my screen. Oop, Nicole's okay if I take over? Oh, here we go. I want to show us a quote to get us started here. And it's probably one that you all are pretty familiar with. Let's see here. Here it is. Okay, we got to learn from the great Dr. Maya Angelou. People will forget what you said. Can you all see that okay? Y'all see it? Okay, good. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And likewise, you probably don't remember. It's like, what were we having this argument about? I don't even remember now, but I know I'm mad at you. I know that you hurt me. I know that you said these things that made me feel this way. I don't remember exactly what you said, but this is the impact. And so I want to talk to you all about intent versus impact. Are you all familiar with this concept, intent versus impact? I'm seeing some nods. Okay. So oftentimes people, if you do something, you have good intentions for doing it, right? And it might still hurt someone else. You might not be aware of an aspect of their identity or whatever the case may be. And then they will maybe say back to you, hey, this hurt, or this, affected me in this way. And often our response might be, well, I didn't mean it that way. Because what happens, we're maybe feeling on the defensive, and we're wanting and feeling like maybe called out for intentionally hurting the other person when we wouldn't ever want to do that. And so this concept of learning and understanding and thinking about intent versus impact is really, really important, because both of those two can exist at the same time. And that's important to keep in mind and important to remember. So I could say something, it inadvertently hurts a colleague's feelings. They tell me about it. And instead of saying, but I didn't mean that, that wasn't my intent, I could instead say, I'm really sorry to hear that. And tell me more about that so that I make sure that I don't do that again. Certainly, I hope you know about me, but if you don't, you'll get to know me that wasn't my intention. And also I recognize that though it wasn't my intention, I can hear from what you're telling me that it really had a negative impact on you. So already, tell me. We need to engage, y'all. I'm really it's not going to just be me talking at you and that's it. So tell me in the chat, or unmute if you'd like to. Did you hear that shift? Did that make sense? Is that helpful? Thank you, Rita. Of intent versus impact, recognizing that those don't need to be two different things. They can both exist at the same time. So now we're going into both and thinking. This is very important, setting up some framework as we get into these tools. Okay, good, thank you. Oh, hey, Justin's here too. Yay, Justin. Yay, night ops. Night ops. Shout out to my night ops people. So yes, acknowledging. Exactly. Thank you, Jessica. Because that's often where a lot of conflict comes from, is when we don't acknowledge that that person feels what they feel, and their feeling is their experience. And you can't take that away. And so then we get into both and thinking. So how I think about this one is, so say we had a dinner party and we had a great time, and it's time to go. And so I say to my host or hostess, thank you so much for, hosting. I had a great time, but now it's time to go. And so what did I just do there? I put a but. And when we put a but, it's putting one part of that phrase above the other. Okay. And so it's giving value to one and saying that it's less than the other. So oftentimes people will maybe give a comment or give a compliment, and anything after or anything before the but, just nobody hears. It's like, you're really great at this and this and this and this and this. And it's like, but da 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 da. And so now I didn't hear any of those maybe good things because I was focused on the negative things. We live in a deficit society. We focus on what we don't have, what we need, what we're weak at, what we need to improve on. We focus on the things after the but. And so often when we're about to have these conversations that may be difficult, it's important to recognize that both things can be equal. So instead, I might say to my hostess or host, thank you so much for hosting. I had a great time, and it's time for me to go now. Both things. I can both have a great time and it'd be time for me to go. I don't have to use a but that makes it so that one is inferior to the other. And so those things, recognizing that's already going to be super helpful. And a lot of the conversations that you'll have is if you can recognize that agreement doesn't have to be there. You don't have to acknowledge or know everything. It's okay for you not to know about every experience and every possible, way that someone could be hurt. That's impossible. And see what I did there, because I could have said but. And it's also important for us to listen when someone says that it's hurting or something has impacted, and be able to hold space for both the harm or the hurt and our intention. So intent versus impact, both and thinking. Is that making sense? Is that helpful? Okay. Is that anybody think of an example to share?
I can go ahead.
Yes, please go for it.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking about something that I've been talking about with my therapist, and have been for a while, is just like this idea that once you are to let words leave your mouth, it's your intention no longer has much weight, because people are going to interpret what you say however they see fit. And that's something that you have to respect as like a communicator. And so I think it's really interesting, like that tool that you gave, just about like the reduction of using but when you're making two statements that can go together. Yeah, so I was just thinking of that.
Yeah. So, no, Rita, not that the word but is the inferior word, but when you use but, it's kind of like a little lever that happens, and the but's in the middle. So it's like, maybe I can think of a different example. Let's see. So Rita, I noticed that you, put something in the chat, but I didn't really think that it was relevant, right? So if we did those two things, it's like, okay, I'm going to focus on what I said after the but, which is what was it relevant, which it totally was. So please. Focused on, hey, you put the example there, the thing that you said before the but. So it's not the but itself that makes it inferior or that it is an inferior word, but rather the phrasing that happens beforehand. So it's that in communication piece is important. Ooh, let's see. Jennifer says, I once heard using but negates everything you said before the but. Correct. Yeah. So that's what we're talking about. And there's nothing worse than an apology followed by a but. Yeah, the apology is negated for all intents and purposes, something I work on with the husband. Yeah, Elizabeth, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, it's like, I'm sorry, but I didn't mean to do it, right? So we're going back to that intent versus impact again. And so what we're talking about right now is how to hold space for both of those feelings. Yes, I might not have intended to do that. And I recognize that how you experience that is real. And I'm going to listen to that. So when we're engaging in these type of CAREfrontation, communications, I want us to think about seeking understanding, staying curious and seeking understanding rather than being on the defensive or putting others on the defensive. So we want to stay away from shame or blame or, the you did this kind of things. So I'm going to share a tool with you for helping with that because this is hard stuff. So I want to provide some frameworks and some tangible things that you can use right away in maybe some people that you're already thinking about when you signed up for this session. All right. So we're going to talk about is I like to use is open the door, but recently found another version of that that's called the nonviolent communication or NVC. Dawn, have you heard of that before? Yeah, okay. So I see it being similar, but I want to share this with you. So here, let me share this part of my screen. I think this is a helpful tool. And here, and I'll share actually the link to this as well. Chat. So here is, oops, that is not it. There we go. So this is non-violent communication. All right, so here's the steps. Let's zoom in. Everyone can see it? We're seeing it. Okay, good. Thanks, Stephanie. Okay, so how we can use it. So start with observations, and this should be really familiar for my residence life folks or folks who have to write incident reports, right? So say I observe someone who I believe to be under the influence of alcohol in the residence hall. Let's just say that. Instead of writing or saying you've been drinking, or I think you've had alcohol, right? Because those potential assumptions, what I want to say or write are observations, facts. I see you stumbling. I smell, something that I believe smells like alcohol. You're slurring your words. Your eyes are dilated, etc. Right? Like, what are the things that you can observe that is without judgment? Right? The things that you can observe without judgment. So what I observe, what I can see, what I can hear, what I remember, what I imagine, what's free from my evaluation that does or does not contribute to my well-being. So I noticed that the dishes are still in the sink. So way into this is I noticed that, or I observed that, and whatever it is. So, and that's where I use open the front door. So open is the observations, or so open for me, it just helps me remember open the front door versus the MVC. But it's the similar things, right? So you want to start with whatever the thing is you notice. I noticed that you showed up late to that meeting. I noticed that you turned in this assignment late. Whatever it is, okay? All right, next up. Feeling. All right, we can talk about feelings. How I feel, your emotion or the sensation rather than the thought. And you use the I feel statements. So for me, sometimes as a supervisor using this, I sometimes will think about how I feel, or I think about the impact of what I observed. So it could be the impact that it's having on the team. So I noticed that you, responded to your colleague in the meeting this way. And I'm feeling like, or I get the sense that this might be having a negative impact on the team. Or I saw them react in this way. And so this is how I'm thinking how it might have been received, or how I received it. So using I statements or I feel statements, or how I'm thinking or observing, about how the impact might be. Okay, so hopefully you all have an example and you're thinking through how you might be using this strategy. This is my hope for you all. I'm going to just put that out there. Needs. This is so hard. What do you need? How often do you get asked the question, what can I do? What do you need? And then you're like, I don't even know what I need. I just know that I'm upset and I'm mad and I'm frustrated, or I just have all of these feelings and I don't even know how to articulate it. Right? So what I need or value, rather than a preference or a specific action that causes my feelings. So in the MVC, how I'm understanding it is, so that you would say, I noticed that you showed up late to the restaurant, and maybe only text me about it after the time that we were supposed to meet. And the needs would sound like, I value being on time, and it's something that I hold in high regard, and I deem being on time as demonstrating respect. So you're not judging the other person for what they did or didn't do. Rather, you're saying, this is how I operate. This is what I value. This is what I need. Because what that's going to do later is allow you all to have a conversation and a discussion about how to meet that need. You might have a suggestion for how to meet that need, but once you articulated the need, it helps you come up with more opportunities for discussion about other ways that need can be met that you might not have thought of. So that's slightly different at this point, because open the is thinking. And the thinking is the rationale for why that person did what they did. And so I'm giving you two models kind of side by side. So hopefully that's not overwhelming. But also recognize that, for me at least, it makes sense in my head that they're similar. So the thinking might be putting yourself in that person's place or head or space, and demonstrating that you've thought about them or where they might be coming from. So it might sound like, I noticed that you turned in this assignment late or not completed. I'm thinking that it might have been because you had multiple priorities on your plate and you ran out of time. And so you wanted to submit something, so you got it in. So that's kind of like the, hey, now I might feel a little bit more seen, because, it's not just about you did this and it's wrong. We want to stay away from judgment, but rather we want to showcase that, hey, I've thought about it from your perspective, and I'm telling you clearly what I notice, and I'm letting you know maybe then how it impacts. So that's the slight, like, little bit of a difference between NVC, nonviolent communication, and open the front door. Is feelings come second with NVC, and then needs. And with open the front door, it's observations, thinking or kind of rationale, and then feelings. But either way, they both end with requests. So here's what this looks like. So request, or the door is desire, the front door, is clearly requesting that which would enrich my life without demanding. So the concrete actions I would like taken is. And this, I think, is the biggest piece that people often miss when they're having these types of conversations, is that they miss the place where they say, if this were to happen again, what would I want you to do differently? If this were to happen again, what would I want you to do differently? I noticed that you left the dishes in the sink. I'm thinking that it's because you were rushing on your way late for work, maybe. However, maybe I feel or the impact is when you leave your dishes in the sink, the story that I tell myself is that you think I'm your maid and you're going to clean up. I'm going to clean up after you. And so my hope in the future is that if you can't get to the dishes, you can let me know or text me or leave a message that says, hey, I forgot it. I'm still going to get to it. I'm not leaving it for you to do, just so that we can acknowledge that you are going to come back to it. It's not just completely forgotten and then left for me to do. So we just open up the dialogue about where you are, what you're going through, what's going on. If I were to do it with the NVC, I might put in the place of the thinking or rationale. I might say, it makes me, anxious when I'm in a messy space, or when things are in the sink for over 24 hours, and so I really need that time window of cleanliness. That's my need. So then when we have the request, then they can say, okay, maybe that request I can't do exactly, but based on your need, I could maybe do it this way. And so that's kind of why that's helpful. Okay, so I'm gonna pause there. Thoughts, reactions to either open the front door or the NVC process. Is this helpful? Can you see yourself using it? What questions do you have? Ooh, I see something in the chat. Yes. Chaz says, putting oneself in another's shoes is the epitome of empathy, right? So yes. What's beautiful about the NVC process is that they have a tool. I like the name of this. It's called emergency empathy. And I just think it's like emergency empathy. Stop what you're doing and empathize. And really what it's about is when you feel the other person on the other side begin to escalate, they get louder or they go on the defense or, those sort of things, then pause and ask them a question about what you hear them saying. This is the moment where paraphrasing is going to be helpful. Emergency empathy is paraphrase. So what I hear you say is this. It might feel strange the first couple of times you do it because it might feel formulaic, but trust, it works. So they're getting heightened, and then you're like, okay, I just want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly. So you're feeling like I don't, trust you, or, I don't believe that you can do this because of me talking to you about it. And then they can say, no. It's really da-da-da. So getting that clarification from the other person of, am I hearing you right? Am I understanding what you're trying to communicate? Let me say it back to you. and then they can clarify. But in that moment of them clarifying, it already will bring them back down from that heightened sense of like feeling attacked or feeling unheard or feeling judged or feeling blamed or, you know, all of those. And now they're feeling understood. And now they're like, okay, we're in this together and we're going to work on this. Okay, awesome. So I got some things in the chat. Here we go. Megan says, this is very helpful. Awesome. I'm so glad, Megan. I think I could definitely use NVC more in work and personal conversations. Absolutely. And there's actually a book that I recently read, listened to on Audible that takes this tool and kind of gives some more stories. And it's called The Art of Nonviolent Communication by Micah Salaberios. And it was just how he has a nice soothing voice too. And then he gives specific examples and kind of walks you through it, which is really nice. Using observable realities eliminates the risk of assuming and potentially escalating further. Thank you, Jessica. Absolutely. You already got a star, or not a star, but a heart from other people. Jennifer, this is very helpful. In many situations, I've experienced that saying, I feel isn't always received well. Ooh, okay. Thank you for that. And I also think that it matters where this conversation takes place. Absolutely. With others present versus one-on-one. You are absolutely right, Jennifer. And so certainly, this was one of the things I wanted to get into. So thank you, Jennifer, for getting us there, is how do you even get to this place where you're having the conversation? That's hard for people. Right? That's hard for people. So I found, and I need to see if I can pull it up, but certainly maybe, I don't know if it's possible, Nicole, for us to like email some things after this. Is that okay? Okay, perfect. So I'll do some follow-up emailing out of resources because I love sharing resources. Y'all who have no Clifton Strengths, input's my number 6, given the resources. And so just being able to have some one-liners, some sentences for even beginning to have this conversation. So it might sound like, you know, because you don't want to do we need to talk, dun, 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 in a text message or stating that, like that can raise somebody's anxiety right away. And so how do you say that? It's like, hey, I just want to follow up after that, you know, the meeting. Is this a good time? So don't, just because you decided and you're ready and you're able to have that conversation doesn't mean the other person is. And so going into it by asking a question, stating as specific as possible without like fully going into it, but it's like, hey, about that meeting the other day, or, you know, about, you know, how we're communicating with one another. I just want some time. Maybe can we go to get coffee or a smoothie? Is now a good time to kind of like talk or process? Oh, here's something I wanted to share as well. I have so many resources for you all. If you all know Brene Brown, she has, let's see, where did that go? She has what she calls rumble language. And so here, I'll put this up on the screen. So this might help as well. And I'll put this link to this, and then we'll get back to the comments. And this may be more so once you're in the conversation, right? But these things have been so helpful for me. And you have been heard me say it a little bit earlier, right? So the story that I made up is, this might be easier to talk about than I feel, right? It's like, the story that I made up is this, or I'm confused about whatever it is. Tell me more about this. Asking a question of someone to allow them to provide the context and not assume. I think that's what like Open the Front Door and NVC is working with you all on, or work on us, not only you all, but working on us to not say, you did that thing and it made me feel this way. So like, why'd you do that? And how do I get you to stop? Well, that's like abrasive, aggressive, and judging and blaming and all of those things, right? But if I came to you and said, that hasn't been my experience. If somebody's talking about someone else, let's say, behind their back, and we're like, I haven't had that experience with that person. Tell me more about what you're experiencing or what you need if it's not what they're providing. So that could be a way in. Or I noticed that you're really passionate about that particular topic or subject. And I'm curious about that because I don't really maybe have that same level of passion or feeling about it. So can you talk to me a little bit more about where that might be coming from? Tell me why this doesn't fit or work for you. Walk me through that. Help me understand. So this is another tool, but absolutely going back to the chat is you might not want to have certain conversations in front of other people or even in the moment sometimes. It may be best to have this one-on-one, in person, even, phone call. I know, maybe not video screen because that might feel like it takes a lot of effort or energy. So sometimes I might say, hey, we need to have a difficult conversation. Not that I would say it like that, but like we need to have a conversation. Maybe let's just do this on a phone call. And then that way you don't have to worry about what your face is doing. You can just, at least during the pandemic, that's what I did. It's like, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to be on the phone. Let's talk through this. And then it takes off some of the pressure. So hopefully, okay, I got a smiley from Jennifer. So yes. Also, sometimes thinking about in a workplace setting, if you need to have a conversation with another colleague, but you don't yet know, you can go to a supervisor or a colleague and say, okay, I'm having, maybe a disagreement or a difference of opinion or perspective from this other person, and I want to talk to them directly. Can we do some role playing, or can you give me some advice on how to have that conversation? That's different from tattling or gossiping or those sort of things, right? Like being able to say, I'm going to and want to have this conversation directly with my colleague or peer or maybe supervisor. And I'm talking it out with you first so that I can make sure that it's a good and healthy, conversation. So absolutely. Okay. I like MDC because talking over both of your needs is a great way to highlight shared goals with the person you're talking to. Absolutely, just on. Absolutely. And it makes it, it takes it away from it being all about one person or all about you. It's about, hey, what are we trying to go for? What's the need? What's the common goal? And how do we work on this together? And it can be scary. And so, so definitely. By whom? What, Ms. Doreen, what was that question about? I might have missed when you wrote it. By whom? What was that? Do you recall? Maybe not. Oh, is she typing? The book. Oh, by whom? Got it. Micah Salabarios. But I'll send it out again. Thank you. This is helpful as someone who panics in these conversations and forgets what to say. Absolutely. So it's like, wait, open the front door, and that's why talking it out with someone else. Oh, Elizabeth put the audible in. Thank you, Elizabeth. Sweet. That brings up a question I have about body language, maybe. Okay, if you do have a one-on-one conversation, I found others can find me intimidating just due to my height. Good self-awareness, Jennifer. Thank you. I try to take a seat and be, I think it's probably at the same level to avoid this. Are there other suggestions for helping the person feel more comfortable? Thank you so much for that question, Jennifer. Yes, you can do some mirroring. So thinking about your body language. So oh gosh, okay. Now my brain is like all the different things. you can, one, sitting is good, and thinking about where you're sitting in relation to the other person. Is there an obstacle or object in the way, like a table? Or are you sitting kind of side by side next to each other, or kind of catty corner? So that automatically kind of sets the tone. Where is it taking place? Is it taking place in your office or their space? Because then that's kind of territorial. So finding a space that's maybe more neutral, like a conference room or outside on a bench or something. Certainly then if it's outside on a bench, is it public space that other people can hear? So then people might, not be able to fully, disclose and engage. So thinking about those things, certainly thinking about if you're crossing your arms or crossing legs or things like that, that can be seen as being closed off. And so you might keep your, hands and legs like more open, or mirror whatever they're doing with their body. So if they're closed, then it might be a little bit okay for you to close, or if they're leaning in, leaning in certainly demonstrates and showcases that you're engaged in that conversation. So those are some of the things I tend to, do one of these, to be like, it is helpful just to show that active engagement. And I think this is where the paraphrasing is going to be helpful, because it helps them know that you're listening, asking questions that have to do with what they were already talking about. There's nothing wrong with your height for me because my family is taller than me. Yeah, height, but it's good that you're aware of how it might be perceived by others, not necessarily that that characteristic is the problem, but it's like in that setting, that could be a barrier to success there. Okay, so I want to share a couple more things with you all. One, we said this word, but I want to kind of break this down a little bit more and talk about reserving judgment. And it keeps popping up on this other screen that I don't want it to be on. Hold on. Why is it doing that? Maybe do it over here. Nope, it just wants to be on that screen. Okay, we're going to do it over here. Hopefully you can see it over okay from this viewpoint, because it wants to be funny. Don't you love technology? Nope. Oh dear. Hold on. See, when I do that, it goes somewhere else. And then you all see that. Well, that is frustrating.
And when those controls pop up, there's a display settings tab that you can click on, and you should be able to change how it's showing up on the screens.
Okay, I got it. Okay, here we are. Reserving judgment. So what I mean when I say that is leaving room in your mind for alternative explanations for what you might be thinking, seeing, feeling, or experiencing. So it requires seeking clarifications. We talked about staying curious, seeking understanding before reacting on your first thoughts. So are you going to judge? Yes, you can't help yourself. It's human nature. What we work on is reserving that judgment before acting on those first thoughts or impressions. So here's a 3-step. You ask yourself these things. How do I feel about how do I feel about what am I thinking, seeing, or experiencing? And why do I feel this way? So you're checking your own perception and ego. Hey, I'm noticing that I jumped to thinking that because they're late, they're disrespecting me. Where does that come from? Years of people telling me that, or my culture, right? So let me reserve judgment and instead answer the question. Hey, I noticed that you were late. Is everything okay? Like having that first and foremost concern, but then, hey, let's talk about that. I noticed this being a pattern. My need is, to start on time because that's something that I value. And also I'm trying to understand you and where we can compromise, right? Two, my past experience might be influencing how I'm seeing and judging this situation. So recognize your triggers that somebody may inadvertently be setting off, or your socialization. This is how I have learned how it is done. I've been rewarded or I've been punished for doing this, and now I'm seeing it being done differently. So I need to recognize those things and, like, pause before taking action. Or the third piece is, what else could be going on here other than what I think? Hey, I noticed that I've texted you a couple times and you haven't responded, or you've taken a long time to respond. Is it me? And then they're like, oh my goodness, no, I've had so many things going on. And so that moment of reserving the judgment, checking in, and verifying is going to be super, super helpful. So thoughts about that? That's another way to check in. Thoughts about that? We'll go back to, yes, we will send the handouts. Rita says, I'd like to know about Luis's question. Oh, let's see. Did I miss something? If the original conversation doesn't produce a positive result or change, how would you approach follow-up conversations? Ooh, thank you, Rita. I had missed that one. Thank you, Luis. Okay, so yeah, so say I have this conversation, and what I'm assuming that saying that it doesn't produce a positive result or change is they keep doing the same thing, or they didn't maybe do what I requested. Really, will depend on the relationship, right? So are you their supervisor? Are they your supervisor? Are they a peer or colleague? Is it impacting you from doing your work? Like, it really is going to depend on the relationship. So assuming it's at work, since we're at work, you can try and go back in again, certainly, and say, hey, remember we had talked about, this observation before, and kind of had agreed to this, like, just checking in. I've noticed these things, and it seems like, and there hasn't really been a change. Is that how you're viewing it as well? Or tell me about how you're experiencing that. I'm just checking in. And then they can be like, oh my goodness, no, I've totally been putting in all of this work and effort and energy and da-da-da, or they're just like, I don't know what other like thoughts or feelings. So you could do that, right? Which that's hard to do. It's like coming back and holding people accountable to what they said they were going to do. Another thought is to then maybe go to a supervisor and, again, ask for advice, not necessarily saying, hey, supervisor, now this is on you, go figure it out, right? But it's like, hey, ask for advice. This is what happened. This is what I've done so far. This is what continues to happen. Like, what are other alternatives? That sort of thing might be in a, maybe work setting. This is also where, and I've used it a couple times, so I'll maybe see if I can pull up the slide on perspective checking as well. And I've demonstrated that a little bit here, but let me see if I can share that with you all as well. Because a lot more HR things, a lot of times, in order for us to, document something or potentially move the needle on getting positive change to happen, is that people need to be told what it is that they're doing, because people might assume that they already know. Like, they know that they're hurting other people, or they know that they're disrupting, and a lot of times they might not. And so being really clear about this is the action, this is the impact, this is the desired change. And then if you go back in, being able to say, this is the observation, this is what we agreed to, like, help me understand where, you know, where I can support you more, or what are the barriers to success that we can talk through, because it doesn't seem like you have all the tools that you need to be able to make this change. But perspective checking, if people like, I know you all seem to be handout people of like, hey, you know, these are the 3 things. Describe the behavior, what's observed, perception. Provide at least 2 possible interpretations of the behavior, like it could be this, it could be this, and then ask for that clarification of how do you experience it? You know, what are you thinking about that? Help me understand that. Those sort of things is kind of that way of perspective checking. Hopefully, Rita and Luis, was that helpful? Okay. And I don't see Luis's screen, but okay. Let me know in the chat if not, Luis, and we can, I have learned that the more you mirror others in the body language, it becomes automatic. Yes, it does. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So 5 minutes left. This might be way too much information. This is going to be way too much information, but I do want to share. I want to share one more tool. Let's see. Okay, perfect. Or one more, I don't know, thing to think about when we're having these types of conversations. And this I took from the Longhorns for a Culturally Competent Campus. If you all haven't heard about LC3, or Longhorns for the Culturally Competent Campus, that's something that Housing and Dining put on. Oh, good. Thank you, Jennifer, for that comment. But they put on for any resident, and it's a 10-week session where we're talking about how to communicate across culture. So this is something from them, and something that I'm now certified in is intercultural conflict style, or the ICS inventory. And there's many different, you know, confrontation styles, but 2 or really like 4 types. So direct or indirect is how a way to express disagreement, or emotionally restrained, or excuse me, emotionally expressive or restrained is the way to express emotion. So disagreement and emotions. And so I'm going to scoot through these slides. So this has, at least this is the way they typically talk about it, is, hey, some examples of direct versus indirect. Nothing done with intelligence is done without speech. Put in the chat, is that direct or indirect? Nothing done with intelligence is done without speech. Direct, question mark? So direct is when you're, you know, one-on-one, going at it, talking through it. So for me, I'm thinking this one's direct. Hear 1 and understand 10, though, that's indirect. Indirect might use a third party, or might talk, some people would say talk around something, or like talk about something and, you know, have a meaning embedded in there. I know I use indirect. So the third one, it's good to know the truth, but it's better to speak of palm trees. That's more indirect. Say what you mean what you say. Direct. Yeah. So expressive and restraint. The first to raise their voice loses the argument. Is that expressive or is that restraint? What do we think? Expressive. Okay. I agree with you. It's expressive. What is nearest the heart is nearest the mouth. What is nearest the heart is nearest the mouth. Hey, I'm thinking about it, I'm feeling it, boom, I'm going to express it. Silence produces peace, and peace produces safety. That's restraint. After a storm, fair weather. After sorrow, joy. Expressive. Cool. So this is what happens when the 4, you know, the conflict styles come together. So if verbal directness and indirectness is up and down, and emotionally restrained and emotionally expressive is side to side. Then when you get a verbally direct person who's also emotionally restrained, you're in more of a discussion style. That's typically North America and American style. If you're verbally direct but emotionally expressive, that's more engagement style. If you're verbally indirect and emotionally restrained, that's more accommodation style. And if you're more indirect but emotionally expressive, that's more dynamic style. Okay. So discussion style, this is, some ways that they prefer engaging in this, confrontation or conflict, some strengths of the style, and some weaknesses as perceived by others. Not that it's necessarily a weakness, but it's how it might be perceived when engaged in that way. Okay, so that's discussion style. The next step, engagement style, prefers face-to-face, based on full emotional presence, comfortable with confrontation, to air differences. They might use humor. Okay, Olivia, no problem. Accommodation style might use third party, might value stories, talking around things. And certainly, and like I said, I'll share with these. And then the last one is preferred third party. Their credibility is grounded in that expression, and hyperbole might be used, or non-linear arguments. Just wanted to share in case some people are like, hey, I communicate my conflict this way, and I notice that my, peer or partner or other person in a relationship communicates this way, which way is the better way, right? And it's both and thinking, right? Both have good things, both have potential ways that it can be perceived negatively. And so there's pros and cons, but I think what's helpful is being aware that other people might have other styles, and that'll help you seek understanding. Thank you all for your time. Hopefully that was helpful.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sobers. That was a great presentation. I think some really good takeaways to remind us, it's not just what we have to say to people, but it's how we say it and even where we say it that impacts how well we communicate and how well we're heard.
Awesome.
So, and thank you for all the
handouts. Nice summary. I hope that was still recorded because I'm like, yes, all of that.
If y'all have a minute, we definitely appreciate your feedback so we can continue to make these learning opportunities inclusive and accessible for everyone. I will work with Dr. Sobers to include some of those handouts in the follow-up email to everyone, so you will have access to all that content as well. Thank you so much for everyone for being here and being engaged and taking part in the conversation today. We really appreciate it. I'll hang around a few minutes if anybody has any questions, but if you have time, please feel free to give us some feedback, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.
Mahalo.
Thank you, Dr. Sobers, so much for being here.